All right, well, if a picture says it all, I think this picture right here says what we've already known for a long time, that yours truly has been left behind in more ways than one. Tempe, Arizona, as we say welcome to the Combine 2026 Indianapolis. Darren Urban, Dani Sureck on the road, leaving yours truly behind to mind the store, which, by the way, has a double entendre. There's a little foreshadowing what I just said. But first, greetings out to Indianapolis in the Combine. How are we doing?
Does it make you feel any better, Paul, that it was a high of 25 degrees?
A little bit, actually. Yes, a little bit. I do take a little bit of glory in that. Yes, I do.
Okay, well, then there you go.
Yeah, it was pretty chilly last night walking around. Although some of us walked around, some of us insisted on taking an Uber for 5 minutes.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow. Well, it took
Unbelievable.
less than 5 minutes for someone to
You
catch
feel better
a
about
stray.
yourself?
No, not really.
Okay.
Do you look like the typical Arizona residents who are caught in the Midwest in February during a cold snap? I mean, are you ill-prepared?
I'm not ill-prepared, which is actually what makes me look like someone from Arizona, because the coat I was wearing Monday night when we got here to go outside, Paul, probably weighs 10 pounds, and it almost goes down to my ankles. It's very long and it's very thick, but it kept me warm, even in my quick Uber ride.
Dani brought two different heavy coats. I thought that was...
Two.
No.
Two winter coats?
Two winter coats. I wouldn't say two heavy coats, though there's a difference. And if you must understand, one is actually a pretty light coat. The material is meant to be good against wind, and it has a hood in case there was any sort of precipitation, and my long, thick coat does not have a hood. And I was already checking a bag, Paul, so why does it matter?
Well,
we are supposed to get some snow later in the week.
You're on expense report. Check as many bags as you want. It's what's
That's
necessary for the job. That's how that works over there. All right. Well, look, until the last 24 hours, yours truly actually had something in common with the Cardinals' brand new head coach, Mike LaFleur. Neither one of us had ever been to the Combine, but now he has arrived. According to Monti Ossenfort, that is a job requirement. So let's just start right there, because there's something Monty said within the press conference that I want to get to momentarily. But first, you guys were there on the front lines. Some big picture takeaways on what the head coach and GM had to say to the media.
Well, I would start with Monty, and let's be fair, Paul. I mean, I think Monty always plays his cards pretty close to the chest, and today was no different. He actually came out and had a opening statement about the quarterback situation, knowing everybody was going to ask about it, and he basically said everything he said before. Our options are all on the table, and we're continuing to have these discussions. He was pressed at one point, somebody making the note that we're about 20 days out, I think, about for the 2027 guarantee on Kyler Murray's contract, having to make a decision on that if he's on the roster. And he basically said that is a conversation that's ongoing, just like all the conversations about players with certain contractual language is ongoing. So not a whole lot of clarity today that we haven't already heard, and it sure feels like at this point, when it comes to the quarterback situation, we're probably going to be waiting for any real news. It's not going to happen until it actually happens, if that makes any sense.
And Paul, I actually was not able to be at Ossenfort's podium press conference because I was actually conducting an interview with the head coach and offensive coordinator, which Cardinals fans will get to see here very soon. But I was there for LaFleur's podium presser, and when it came to the quarterback, similar to what he said at his opening press conference, which was, I've reached out, I've heard back from the quarterback, and I'm going to leave the conversations at that. Somebody did follow up asking about the type of player Kyler Murray is, considering, well, yes, he wasn't coaching defense. LaFleur has been in the NFC West for all of Murray's time here in Arizona, and talked about how with the defensive coordinators he has worked with, he has seen how tough of a week it is when prepping for Murray and with the Cardinals, and just his skill set and how good of a player he is. Really kind of left it at that, though. So long story short, not a lot of answers that we didn't already have coming into the Combine.
Yeah, I'm looking at his quote right here. I went back and listened to it. Mike LaFleur on the QB situation, quote, "I'm open to embracing the best QB possible for the Arizona Cardinals. We're still working through that process." And that's not just media speak. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, there are a lot of conversations happening with a lot of teams talking about a lot of players. How do you know that someone isn't going to come up to you from another team, another decision maker, and make a decision for you with an offer that you must seriously consider? I mean, this is where a lot of these later trades and roster maneuvers are formulated, generated. Am I wrong on that, Darren? I mean, that's one of the big benefits of attending the Combine.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Paul. I think at this point it's one of those situations. Look, I'm not naive to think that perhaps conversations couldn't have happened already, but I think this is where they really go into high gear. You get everybody together for the most part. People start talking a little bit more. You get a little bit more clarity, not a lot, but a little bit more clarity in terms of who might be available in the draft, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think this is where things heat up. The agents are here, but the difference with this situation, maybe with some other situations, is that oftentimes when we start talking about trades and things, it's oftentimes connected to the draft. So you've got a lot longer of a runway, whereas in this case, because of that contractual trigger that Kyler Murray has, something's probably going to happen a lot sooner than later.
All right, so Monti Ossenfort, let me get to what I was referring to earlier. As you guys mentioned, he had the opening statement, all options on the table, anticipating the quarterback question. He got it at least 2 or 3 different ways, including a little bit later, Malik Willis. Hey, Monti, you were with Malik Willis in Tennessee. We'll get to that in a little bit. But not long after, just under the 6-minute mark, Monti Ossenfort, Cardinals GM, threw out there, and I quote, "Who knows if we're even going to be picking number 3? We've got a long way to go between now and then." Now, you might want to perhaps 1 + 1 = 3, guys, but was he not saying we're open for business? Was Monti Ossenfort not putting the open sign in the storefront window? Was he not saying that?
You didn't need to hear Ossenfort say that to know that's the case. I mean, look at his track record, right? I mean, when the Cardinals had the 3rd overall pick last, they traded down to 12 and then back up to 6 and landed Paris Johnson Jr. That to me is, I don't know if it's a smokescreen necessarily, but I do think that it is true, right? The phone lines are going to be open. Now, considering this is a non-quarterback heavy draft, do I expect to see a lot of draft trades? No, I don't, because I think this is going to be a lot more straightforward than maybe the last couple of years we've seen.
When I go to start, I have this old car. It's like 60 years old in the garage, and I haven't started it for a couple of months. I need a little starter spray, right? You spray it in the carb, and then all of a sudden, boom, it works like magic. I just think Monti Ossenfort maybe was stoking the fire a little bit. Just saying, you know what? Maybe my phone's been a little quiet. Maybe enough people haven't come up and tapped me on the shoulder exactly just yet and try to have a conversation. I just want to reinforce the fact that, you know what? I'll talk to you if you want to talk about number 3.
Sure. I also think part of saying that is what's happening right here, right? It's trying to get that conversation with people talking about, are they going to stay at 3? Are they going to trade, right? Things that are going to happen regardless of whether or not he brings it up at the podium, but it clearly gets people talking.
And it dawns on me, you guys don't have the benefit of seeing down the line my fantastic open for business sign that I generated
I can envision it
off the printer
Paul.
all of about 3 minutes ago. So, that was well done there. A little extra prop right there. Malik Willis, other than A.J. Brown and all the talk nationally of yet another diva receiver, by the way, there will be more mentions of A.J. Brown during this podcast. Other than that, stealing headlines of the Combine, Malik Willis in regards to his availability, and it's not just the Cardinals who are getting mentioned in these national stories, Darren, right? You're hearing about, maybe the Dolphins because Jeff Hafley, the Green Bay defensive coordinator, the head coach there. The Jets obviously need a quarterback, and there's dang near a half dozen teams that potentially are being linked to Malik Willis just because other than Fernando Mendoza, what's your next best option if you're a team in need of a quarterback?
Yeah, and that's the whole thing right there, Paul, is the fact that he's probably the best available quarterback at this point when you factor in potential and age and all that stuff, and what has been done on the field. And admittedly, with Malik Willis, it's not like he's been Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, but he has shown some things. But he's the best available, and there's always a quarterback need. And, oh, by the way, the draft hardly has any quarterbacks where you're like, oh, yeah, that's the guy. So, I mean, that's one of the things the Cardinals are in this situation of, because at this point, are you taking a quarterback at 3 or 4 or 5? And this is, quite frankly, as much as you like to stir the pot, Paul, that's one of the reasons why there won't be a trade down, I don't think, at 3, because what are you trading up for?
And that's a good point. Look, we're obviously talking to on the possibility. The domino hasn't fallen yet, if it's going to, on Kyler Murray possibly not being a member of the Arizona Cardinals. That's what this hypothetical situation is going off of. I find the Malik Willis discourse online to be really interesting. Some people are in favor if the Cardinals do decide to bring him in. And as a general manager, Monti Ossenfort, who has experience with Willis earlier on in his career, it's been made very clear by owner Michael Bidwell that this is not a situation where it's another 3 to 4 years of a rebuild. He wants something turned around right now. So that would make more sense of having a somewhat experienced quarterback. And then there's the other end of the discourse of, well, let's continue to rock with Jacoby Brissett, if that's who the quarterback is, and maybe in next year's draft, which is already expected to be a heavier quarterback draft than 2026, is that where the Cardinals would find a future quarterback? It's a really interesting discussion online around Malik Willis in particular.
And for everything, I get it. Next year, theoretically, is going to be a quarterback-rich draft. That can be fleeting. This year is supposed to be much better than it turned out to be. And then there's the other aspect of it. The Cardinals won 3 games this year, and they're still picking number 3. So how many quarterbacks will there be? How many games do you need to lose to be in position to take that franchise quarterback? It's a really tenuous prospect to bank on that. So if the Cardinals are going for a quarterback who they think can win now, makes complete sense. And you know what? If it ends up being Malik Willis, let's just say, I would feel pretty good about that in terms of Nathaniel Hackett just spent this last year with Green Bay. You know, there's, and I'm prone to doing this too. When I think of Malik Willis, I think of Kevin Kolb. I don't know if you do, Darren. I do think of Kevin Kolb. Once upon a time was had for DRC in a round 2 pick from Philadelphia. And it sort of reinforced the notion in hindsight, buyer beware if a team is willing to walk away from what is theoretically a franchise quarterback. Like if you look at Green Bay, when they had Brett Favre, did they come off Aaron Rodgers? No. When they had Aaron Rodgers, did they come off Jordan Love? No. Wait a minute. Now they're willing to come off Malik Willis? They're going to? Well, I get it. Jordan Love is much younger, and it's a different stage of the career. I get it. But hopefully any fear factor would be mitigated by the fact that, A, Nathaniel Hackett was on the staff last year, has inside knowledge, and B, the head coach happens to be brothers with your new head coach, Mike LaFleur. Now, will Jeff Hafley of Miami, who's been the defensive coordinator the last couple of years in Green Bay, go after Malik Willis? I think that'll be telling just because of the familiarity. But I think these are all things that are being taken into account, and we might have a sense fairly soon just based on who's interested, who's not, who has inside knowledge and who doesn't, as to whether the market for Malik Willis is significant or not.
Well, I'm gonna say this about the very first point you made, which was the Packers and you wouldn't walk away from a franchise quarterback. That may be true, but I also think this is a unique situation. Malik Willis is not under contract. You're not going to tag him and pay a backup what a franchise tag for a quarterback would be. You just paid Jordan Love, so you can't really do anything with him. It's not a situation like with Aaron Rodgers necessarily, or even Jordan Love, who were on their rookie contracts when you were quote unquote sticking with them. So it's a confluence of events with where Malik Willis is. Now, I'll agree that, again, you don't know what's going to happen, but this all goes into that big pot of what the quarterback market is this year. Every year you're going to have a handful of teams that are trying to improve or straighten out their quarterback situation. This year is no different. The difference is You don't have a big quarterback class that can address that necessarily, and you certainly don't have a free agent class that can necessarily address that, in part because of what you just said. Teams don't let good quarterbacks go.
Is there much of a buzz about Malik Willis just in general at the Combine, Dani? Like, you put your finger to the wind out there. Is there much talk about that?
I haven't
It's
heard
a cold wind.
It is. Yeah, we got the dry heat. They've got the cold winds.
That's right.
Not when you have 2 winter jackets, it isn't. She's set.
Paul.
Don't go there.
Paul can probably feel the wrath from thousands of miles away from me right now.
It's amazing how much more bold I am from 2 time zones away.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
I haven't heard specifically around Malik Willis per se. I mean, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of question marks about what the Cardinals are going to do at quarterback. And if they're going to move on from Kyler Murray, how are they going to do that? Are there any trade suitors out there? Is it going to be a situation where they're going to have to release him and Murray would sign elsewhere as a free agent, and talking about the cap space and what the Cardinals would still owe in that contract? It's a situation where you have to wait for the first domino to fall, however it may fall. Sure, Malik Willis's name has come up, but I wouldn't say that's something that people are necessarily super excited.
No.
You know what I mean? Like that's not where the hype is per se. It's more the question of what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you ask that, because I just think generally, forgetting Malik Willis, and Dani, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, we've only been here about a day, but like, I don't feel like there's any real big news at this point. Usually there's like some storyline, especially after the coaches have talked, of something happening, or like that's what everybody's talking about. And I don't see that. I mean, there was conversations about Breece Hall getting one of the tags, the Jets aren't going to let him go. I'm trying to think of some of the other things that have popped up.
Kirk Cousins, that was
I guess
sort of news. Everyone expected that, right?
It was expected, and it's Kirk Cousins at the end of his career. It's not like it's Kirk Cousins 5 years ago. Like, again, I don't know if there's anything that's really generating. And again, with what we're talking about, with where this QB class is and where this QB market is, that's another reason why there's probably not a lot of buzz, because it's like, okay, it's Malik Willis. He's probably top of the board right now. I think NFL.com had him as their number 1 free agent available, partly because of being a quarterback. But it's like, it's not like I'm trying to think. It's not like if Micah Parsons was on the market. It's just not going to be that way.
Although there was an interesting comment from Mike LaFleur about the quarterback's coach, Matt Schaub.
Yeah.
And I have that quote here. He said, "Wow, I just hit the jackpot." That was Mike LaFleur's comment, his reaction to when he got a call from his brother, who knows Matt Schaub very well, and Schaub had decided at this point in his life he did want to get into coaching, had received offers earlier, I believe. Timing wasn't right for him in terms of his career or family, what have you. And so Mike LaFleur was pretty effusive in his praise about hiring Matt Schaub as the new quarterback's coach.
Yes, and one of the things I thought was cool about that whole story, because let's face it, there are fans that are concerned about experience on this coaching staff and all that stuff. But one of the things that Mike LaFleur was saying about Matt Schaub was, again, here's a guy that when he was playing, people saw him as being a coach. He didn't really want to do it. There were times where I think he was saying Kyle Shanahan wanted to hire Matt Schaub, and it never quite worked out. And it has worked out this time. And let me just say on a big picture, you and I, Paul, have been around the Cardinals, for instance, for a large number of years at this point. There are often players that think they want to go into coaching or think about going into coaching. Either they know ahead of time, I don't want to be spending that much time doing that, or they go into coaching not really thinking as much about it. And when they realize that they're spending way more time than they did as players and getting a lot less money than they did as players, they tap out.
More work for less money.
So the players that end up being long-term coaches, I think that's impressive, because a lot of times, I mean, we've seen our share of coaches or players come through as coaches. I'm like, yeah, this ain't gonna work.
Paul, when LaFleur was asked about the coaching staff not necessarily having a lot of NFL experience, what he talked on is, to a certain extent, whether it's college or the pros, if you can coach players one-on-one, if you can coach a defensive lineman how to go up one-on-one against an offensive lineman, a DB against a wide receiver, he sees that as something that could be transferred and translated from college to pros.
Yeah, he was talking. He was like, when it comes to position coaches, he's like, we're not talking about coordinators. We're not necessarily talking about being in scheme all the time. If you're talking about teaching, that's kind of where you are.
We had Lorenzo Alexander, 15 years in the league, former Cardinal, Pro Bowler, and we had him on the Red Sea Report last week talking about the value of position coaches, and that's something most even media members, forget fans, even media members aren't that familiar with. They're not front-facing in a lot of ways. And Zoe was just like, hey, 90% of your time as a player during the week is spent with your position coach. It's critical. It's vital. So to Mike LaFleur's way of thinking, if you can identify teachers, which would be in line with the mandate from Monti Ossenfort and Michael Bidwell when they made the change to start the offseason, player development. Right? So if you're just looking for great teachers of the game, the position itself, if you can specialize in that position, whether it's college or pro, and that can translate to the player and translate to the field, I get it. So Matt Schaub, we'll see. I shared this earlier. I said, I don't think people realize how much time the starting quarterback spends on the bench during a game while the defense is out on the field with the quarterback coach. That relationship is vital. It is critical. He's sort of your mental health coach, right? You're sort of your the guy who's there, with trying to let you vent, and he'll absorb any frustration. You're going through the tablet together. So regardless of who the quarterback is, I think that's one of the more interesting hires on this Cardinals list of new assistant coaches. I also thought it was interesting. You guys tell me, Monti Ossenfort talking about how they're still formulating the new training staff, the new strength and conditioning staff. And he said, and I have it right here, we're going to look at how we structure practice, how we train, when players train, and when everyone comes back in April, it's going to be a huge point of emphasis. And that was in regards, sort of a long explanation. The catalyst for that conversation was injuries, player health. But it sounds like changes are afoot on that front.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, something to note is changes happen every year. I mean, the previous coaching staff, right, there was a change of East Coast trips going from 2 days to 1 day. So that's something that every staff is going to look at after every season. And then when you have a 3-win season, you're probably going to go through it with a more of a fine-tooth comb. And so that makes sense, especially, well, yes, there's a certain degree that luck comes into play when it comes to injuries. I do think that is valid to look into, especially a handful of players that have been acquired the last couple of years who haven't dealt with injuries, who have dealt with significant injuries, multiple injuries in Arizona, is what can you correlate in the sense of not blaming someone or position, but what can you correlate in the sense of learning from it and preventing that and actually protecting players and their safety?
I'm disappointed, Paul, because, yeah, he had a longer answer about the injuries, but you missed the best part of that quote, which was, there are two things that suck about life in the NFL, and that's injuries and losing. Right. Unfortunately, we suffered a lot of both last year. That might have been the most bare bones.
You
quote
appreciate the self-awareness,
that was
the honesty.
So true.
Yeah, touche. I buried the lead on that one. You're absolutely right.
I do think I think there's going to be some changes. I do anticipate some of the strength and conditioning staff being retained. Now, who they are yet, I'm not sure. I think they're in the process of that. I don't think there's going to be a complete makeover, but I do think there's going to be a makeover in people and in how they structure things.
Anything else? Any other topics jump out? Either Mike LaFleur, Monti Ossenfort with the media. I mean, the quarterback question got a lot, but beyond that, what else?
The only other thing that kind of stuck in my head was the questions were asked about contract extensions for Paris Johnson and Michael Wilson. Not surprisingly, Monty was not willing to say, yeah, that's absolutely going to happen. But he basically said that they want both those guys around long term and gave them flowery praise. And if you recall last year, one of the biggest topic on this day, because of where the Cardinals were with everything, was a Trey McBride extension. And they basically said the same kind of thing. And then on April 3rd, Trey McBride has an extension. So we'll see what happens. Michael Wilson is more in the McBride area, whereas he's going to be a free agent after this year. Paris Johnson, they can still use the fifth-year option, and that would boost his 2027 salary to over $20 million if they played on it. I'm sure they'd like to get both of them done. I would expect Wilson to be a little bit more pressing because the timing is a little bit more in there. But judging by what he said today, whether it's in April or in June or whatever, August, I do think that those are coming for both those guys at some point.
So, Dani, you and Craig Grillo in particular had a chance to talk with a bunch of the luminaries in the draft world, right? The draft analysts, those who put out the mock drafts, Daniel Jeremiah, Dane Brugler, Charles Davis. I'm probably forgetting 3 or 4
Jordan
more.
Reed with ESPN.
What stood out in terms of maybe strengths of this draft? If the Cardinals aren't going quarterback, then where could or would they go?
Edge rushers seems to be the unanimous answer of where this draft class is pretty deep. And there's 3 names that are getting brought up amongst every analyst for the top of those groups of David Bailey, Ruben Bain, and Arvell Reese. And having those 3 described essentially as whatever kind of ice cream flavor you would prefer, of having different traits. Reese being more of an off-ball player and teams deciding if they want him lined up on the defensive line, more as an outside linebacker, and having their strengths there of what makes sense for a defense. When it comes to offensive linemen, which is a lot of the discussions as well, it's 2 names. It's Spencer Fano and it's Francis Maui-Noa, 2 offensive tackles. And that's an interesting discussion because the edge rushers are a lot deeper. Not so deep for an offensive lineman. Now, they have had praises for day 2 or 3 of still finding a player up at the top of those rounds where the Cardinals are picking. But in terms of first round, it really seems to be those are the 2 big names that have everybody's eyes. And a position, though, that has gotten a lot of excitement when looking past those top first picks in the first round is DBs, cornerbacks, safeties. While those might not be pressing needs at the front of the mind for Cardinals fans, remember that Garrett Williams suffered an Achilles injury at the end of the season. So the likelihood of him missing a significant amount of time next season is pretty high. So the Cardinals could very well be in the market for a nickel cornerback.
Yeah, there seems to be a shift in the mock drafts. Everyone's coming out with 2.0 and 3.0. It seemed like 1.0 across the board was either Fano or Maui-Noa, the tackle. And now this next wave of mock drafts is more prone or likely to have the Cardinals going edge. The 3 names Dani just mentioned. Mel Kiper 2.0 came out earlier today, for example. David Bailey, the Stanford transfer who went to Texas Tech, 14.5 sacks, has ridiculous athleticism. I heard one story, he had 22 miles per hour in a game for Tech last year as an edge, 6'3", huge. And so, okay, that's intriguing. But there's 2 ways to think about it, Darren. Either A, edge is the most loaded position in the draft, and at number 3 overall, you're taking the best position. Or B, there's so many edge players, you wait to the top of round 2 because I do believe Daniel Jeremiah, Dani mentioned, they come in waves. There's the 3 names at the very top of the draft. There's another group or batch of edge rushers that would be late round 1, top of round 2. Do you get your edge guy there if you're the Cardinals? And if there's really only 2 franchise tackles, well, you have your choice at number 3.
Well, here's the thing. This is why the evaluation is so important. Here's what I don't believe in, and that is, again, when you say franchise tackles, potential franchise tackles, you're right, just like these are potential edge guys. But if you come out and you say, and I'm just throwing numbers out here, I don't know anything, and I don't think they have grades yet. But let's say you have even the lowest of those 3 edge rushers as like a 91, but you have the 2 tackles at like 83 and 82. You take the edge rusher. I mean, yeah, you could get the franchise tackle but you could also get another tackle in the second round who, yeah, he's not going to be as good as one of those first ones, but the edge rusher you get in the second round isn't going to be nearly as good as that guy at the top of the draft either. And to me, that's where you can sometimes get in your own way. I know everybody kind of scoffs at the best player available, but you got to get good players. I mean, I've heard more times from other teams of late of like, you have to get elite players to be a good team. And right now, with all due respect to the Cardinals, I think one of the things they're missing is elite players. When the Cardinals were really good in 2015, And I don't want it just to be about personalities or everything, but you could probably tick off, 7, 8 guys on that team that you could call an elite player that, like, moved the meter, whether it was Tyrann Mathieu or Patrick Peterson or Calais Campbell or Larry Fitzgerald or there are other ones that I'm missing off the top of my head. But, like, that was a star-studded team. David Johnson. Like, this team doesn't – when you look at this current roster, who is that guy?
Well, not to mention when you talk about best player available, edge rusher is still a need. That's still an area where outside of Josh Sweat, they're going to need more of an impact there. So that's the blessing, right, is if we're going to talk about an offensive lineman or an edge rusher, good news for the Cardinals is they can use both.
Well, yeah, to your point, anybody remember what the Cardinals' needs were in 2022 when they took Trey McBride?
Yep.
Because supposedly they didn't need a tight end in the middle of round 2 in 2022. Anybody remember what the Cardinals' needs were in 2017 when they drafted Budda Baker near the top of round 2? If you get those really good players, it's funny how you forget what the needs and wants were that year.
Yeah.
It's Dane Brugler told you, Dani. I mean, I sort of nodded and laughed, but it's so true. It all boils down to, like Darren sort of said, what other team draft good players. And if that is a generational player, for the most part, regardless of the position, then you got to go grab that person. And to me, especially what we've seen the last 2 years and the 2 Super Bowl champions, the Eagles and Seahawks, how did they overcome? How did they get to that Lombardi trophy? Well, guess what? They hit and harassed and affected the quarterback.
Dane Brugler's point on that is not to knock this draft class, but the fact that it is not a heavy quarterback draft class. He says there's not a Myles Garrett or a Micah Parsons right off the bat, which is okay. That's going to happen as years fluctuate, which is why you want to get a good player, not just somebody with the skill set who can come and make an impact right away, but the right kind of player who you know is going to progress and develop and long-term still get you those great plays and make a difference 2, 3, 4 years down the line.
And also, not only is there not a Myles Garrett, there's definitely not a Walter Jones or a Jonathan Ogden either. So, like, again, you want to be smart with what you take and get the best players available. And we'll see where this goes. And it's kind of funny because given the situation the Cardinals are in, most any other year all we'd be talking about is the quarterbacks.
Well, and we still have free agency to get to before the draft, which do I think that will necessarily have a huge impact? Not necessarily, because you're always going to want to beef up the trenches, right? You're always going to want to have a strong, stout offensive line. You can always use great edge rushers, and regardless of who the quarterback is, that quarterback is going to need protection. But we could be surprised, and it was a Josh Sweat splash signing, and it's possible, let's say maybe the Cardinals are able to snag a starting right tackle per se, right, in free agency. That could probably change what the priority is at number 3.
Speaking of tackle, I was so happy to hear Daniel Jeremiah express a little bit of dismay in your interview, you and Craig Grillo and Daniel Jeremiah, NFL Network, about Francis Mauigoa, because he's listed at 6'6", anywhere from like 305 to 315. But there was an interview I was looking at to start last season with Miami, with the U, and one of the coaches was saying he was 345 with a body fat percentage of less than 20%, and that's exactly what Daniel Jeremiah said. So now I'm wondering, okay, wait, this is the one measurable I want to see. How big is this guy? What does he weigh? Because to Daniel Jeremiah's point, there's a huge difference in those two measurements.
That's a huge difference, and to be that big and essentially be all muscle is crazy.
It was funny. I was hearing the Lions GM Martin Mayhew was talking today, and somebody asked him where he thought the strengths of this draft were, and he was very apologetic. But he goes, in previous years I've always answered that question. I've been pretty open to how I feel about it. But he said, what I've come to realize is what I feel when I'm talking to you guys at the Combine here at the beginning of the week in late February, I don't feel the same in 5 weeks after that. So we kind of hesitated, and who knows? Maybe we get to 3 or 4 weeks down the road, and people are still going to like the edge rushers, but maybe these tackles, people are going to start doing a little bit more homework and realizing, okay, maybe things are a little bit different. So we'll find out where that goes. What you don't want, obviously, is that whole like, well, the combine changed everything, and we watched all this film, but never mind, because what we saw at the combine, because this dude is got 5% body fat and he's 345 pounds, we'd rather have him when, you know who else had that kind of makeup? Tony Mandarich, Paul.
Oh yeah, that's an all-time poll right there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, number 2 overall.
Dani has no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's and then when they really,
as is the case most of the time.
well, when they really started testing out of college, that's when Tony Mandarich saw his.
And I'm not implying that with any player right now. I'm just saying a draft bust.
To your point though, is typically, and in an ideal world, the combine doesn't necessarily drastically change anything for a player. Now, there's benefits, absolutely, especially in those meetings and those one-on-one settings. The tape doesn't lie, and that's really where teams get an idea of the type of player somebody is. You have your scouting department go out and travel and get a better idea of the type of personality that player is. How coachable are they? And that's what things like All-Star games, the Senior Bowl is understanding. Having your own coaches, part of your staff, go and be involved in those, is understanding how coachable a player is. The combine is one of those areas, similar to a pro day or bringing a player into the building for one of those final interviews, is really just the cherry on top of making sure this is who we thought this player in person was. It's usually not something that's going to drastically change a team's decision on somebody.
Here's one. Reuben Bain Jr. What is he going to measure at? Because right here I'm looking at NFL.com, 6'3", 270 is his draft profile. But when you watch Reuben Bain Jr., does he look like he's 6'3"? Doesn't he look more like James Harrison? And so I'm curious about that one, because that has been a name that has been attached to the Cardinals at number 3 overall. He was really dynamic, especially in December and January in the college football season. He has a nasty edge to him. He's known as being a real dog and kin to a James Harrison. There's that. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone who's going to threaten the 4.21 all-time 40 record? Is there any other player coming in with a certain buzz around him that people want to see the workout or the measurables?
I'm sure there's a lot of guys with the measurables. I mean, you mentioned Bain, some of these tackles. I mean, until and somebody, and I can't remember which coach it was, one coach was talking about the underclassmen, you don't really have the right measurables. The seniors, in some cases, you've already scouted them, but the guys that declared early for the draft, this is really the first chance you're getting to get true measurables out of them. So I'm sure some of that will be looked at. The famous hand size, Paul, for quarterbacks.
Yeah, sure.
My buddy Darren Gant's favorite topic. But, I think ultimately it's going to be it'll be the measurables that a lot of this comes out to. It was really funny. Todd Bowles was talking about, our former Cardinals defensive coordinator, now the head coach of the Buccaneers, was talking today about coming to the Combine, and he was asked about is it a benefit to come to the Combine these days or not, or why do you come? And he basically said it's good to be here, but pretty much most things that you really want to do at this point you could probably do remotely. And then somebody said, then why do you still come to the Combine? He goes, to talk to you guys.
So nice.
Right.
He misses you, Darren, clearly.
Here it is. I just looked it up. It was Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe who experienced the notable rapid change in hand size. Tell your buddy this one. It was last year, 8 3/4 at the Senior Bowl, and then all of a sudden, magically at the Combine, 9 3/8. So there you go.
If I recall correctly, there was some issues at, I think, the Senior Bowl with the measurements of some of that stuff. But don't be bagging on Jalen Milroe. He's got a Super Bowl ring now.
That's true. You're right. And they didn't use Jalen Milroe nearly as much as we forecasted.
We won't hold it against you, Paul.
Yeah, all right. No, don't worry. He'll be the next.
We forecasted.
You know what I am thinking in real time though, Darren. How excited! All this talk is reminding me how close we are to the draft, which means we're that much closer to Paul's 23 players to keep an eye on at training camp to make the team.
That's a good point.
Like Monti Ossenfort, I'm open for business over here. That's the way.
You're holding up the sign.
Holding up the sign right now.
He's
over there.
trading down for more picks.
It is amazing when I get the rare victory, I trumpet it, but then when my numerous failures, it's a we problem. It's amazing how
your wins, though, Paul, they never die. I mean, I'm here in Indianapolis, and I know that the shrimp cocktail at St. Elmo's is $19.95 on the dot because you're a wise guy win.
That's true. All right. So, tell us about the nightlife. Tell us about what's been going on. What's on the docket between, because it's, now that the press conferences have gone down with the head coach and GM, guess what? There's more personal time, is there not?
We still got a lot of work to do when we wrap this up, Paul, tonight. Darren's going to the basketball game
I'm
tonight.
going to effort going to the basketball game, Pacers, Sixers. But, we still have Dani still has the sit-downs, one-on-ones with Monti and LaFleur tomorrow that we have to get done. There's some interviews that I would like to take part in. In fact, tomorrow I want to be around for Bain and Bailey and see what they have to say, potentially about being an Arizona Cardinal and stuff like that. So there's still lots to do, and it's not like we're looking to hang out outside. So we might as well stay inside and get work done.
A lot more Cardinals Cover 2 podcasts, interviews, doing some things for social and TV shows and all that stuff this week. Don't worry though, Paul. We will make time to have some fun out in Indianapolis.
Okay. So it's been a business trip so far, allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yeah. So with temperatures in the 20s, do you appreciate the Cardinals groundbreaking more than ever, considering it was 72 hours ago and you were standing out there in the glorious sunshine?
Yes, I do miss that already. Although, again, first of all, that already feels like it was about 3 weeks ago because that was Thursday, and then we had Cardinals Climb Saturday. But the groundbreaking looks like it's going to be a great facility. Obviously, not opening until 2028, but the wheels are finally in motion in terms of getting that put together, and it will benefit this team, and it will benefit the players. Now, again, we're going to have this will be. We still have 2 combines after this to go to before anybody moves into that.
That's true.
So we don't know what the roster is going to look like, but whoever's around in 2028, it's going to be a great thing.
Yeah, us included.
That's true.
God willing, Paul.
Yeah. What's intriguing is that the team had their eyes on that piece of property, which is a premier location, and I think will only get better with time, for the last 10 years. And then they also have a 10-year vision as to how the 217 acres will be built out way beyond just football. The retail, the residential, the restaurants, everything else, a lot of state-of-the-art design, shaded walkways, everything else that's going to go. I mean, for example, the one comp that was thrown out there, the Star, the Cowboys training facility, Dani, you're very familiar. You can take the baton here in a second, is 90-something acres, and this site is 217 acres, just to give a sense of the size and potential of the Cardinals' new headquarters.
Not just the potential for the headquarters opening, but for the long haul. There's going to be a lot more space as they decide to continue to grow that area, which I think is really cool. And I love the fact that it's not just going to be for football fans, and it's going to have a little bit of something for everybody. And if businesses want to come out and they want to host people that they have visiting, and it's really going to have something for everybody. It's in a really beautiful part of town. I mean, we're standing there, yes, on a open dirt lot, but the McDowell Mountains that were behind us in the frames of everything were just beautiful to look at.
And then you had Cardinals Climb. Darren, I'm really intrigued. Did anyone give you a battle? You did the advanced trail. Did Bernsey come up and maybe give you, a run for your money? I know it wasn't Wolf. Wolf was totally hosed right out of the gate. Anybody else, any unsuspecting combatant you had to deal with?
First of all, I'm bummed I didn't get a chance to see you, Paul. I had heard that you were out and about. I'm not sure where you were, but I know you were there, so props to you.
I was I was on the upper deck somewhere when Darius Robinson was crossing the finish line, and
Wow.
It was great to see and hear the names of a lot of different players who participated as well.
Yeah, it was a great event. Having I forget what it was, 8, 9, 10 players out there was really cool. Trey McBride and Michael Wilson couldn't have been nicer when they were like interacting with people and doing autographs and the selfies and stuff. So it was a great event to raise money for special needs. It's the first of hopefully many, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it again next year. You could still actually donate all the way through March 10th if you just go to I believe it's AZ Cardinals Cardinals Climb.
CardinalsClimb.com.
Yep.
That's what it is. CardinalsClimb.com.
That's your one-stop shop right there. It was amazing how much work was put into the event. I mean, I'm walking around going, this is no small thing. This is no small term.
No.
To pull this off with the level of detail, water stations. I mean, they had fresh fruit at the end. I mean, all these little details. How do you even think of a lot of this stuff? It was
Brought to you by Albertsons. Fresh fruit by Albertsons.
Really well done, especially for a first-year event.
Yes.
They did their homework. And then to go right from the stadium to the great lawn and to have 2 or 3 great bands and just the after party, it was just really well executed. The weather couldn't have been better. It was outstanding. It really was.
Well, and you figure it's only going to get better as you go year to year, and you're able to build on it. So
that's your warm-up for a Tillman run.
There you go.
So there's that, and then there's the news, guys, that came out not long after Cardinals Climb. Couldn't have been more shocking, and it was the loss of Rondale Moore. The authorities say, at least as of right now, self-inflicted gunshot wound, and he was found in the garage of his home in Indiana, 25 years of age, Rondale Moore. And based on the social media posts from the likes of Hollywood Brown and Kyler Murray, he'd been interacting with some of his former teammates earlier that same day.
It's such a tragedy that we don't ever want to be talking about. And Rondale was someone who was very humble and kind. And when Kyle in our department, one of our producers, I think put it really well when we were talking about Rondale's memory of, he felt like you were just talking to anybody else in the building. Didn't necessarily feel like you were talking to professional athletes, someone who was drafted in the 2nd round. And then he was really a joy to be around. And I think this is a really harrowing reminder that, 1, you don't know what people are dealing with behind closed doors, and 2, the rise of sports gambling and fantasy football and how easy it can be for somebody from their couch to message players or talk about them in such an awful manner that your words do matter. And it's a really horrible tragedy for somebody to feel that way and feel like there is no way out. And I know that this is a football podcast, but if there's one note or one person who can take something away from this, it's that it's okay to not always be okay, and that the weight can be heavy to bear, but sometimes the hardest step is simply asking for help, and that there are resources, and hopefully this is, again, while an unfortunate tragedy, hopefully something that can continue that conversation and the importance of mental health, men's mental health, and mental health for athletes.
Yeah, and especially among men, to reach out and ask for help is never a sign of weakness. It's a sign of being wise, being smart, doing the right thing. And it's just staggering. The loss of Rondale at age 25, we all got to know him really well. I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm recollecting a Big Red Rage interview where he's sitting in this chair right here where Darren normally sits. And we talked about him in his famous squat of 600 pounds that was captured on video when he was at Purdue. And him recounting how he got 600 pounds off the rack and it was on his back. And he said, oh my goodness, this is weight unlike I've ever felt before. And he said it wasn't as much setting a record as it was like self-preservation, just the adrenaline of I better get this back up out of the squat position and onto the rack, even though he had about a dozen teammates around him who were ready to spot him. But such an intelligent guy and so well-spoken, and, yeah, such a loss.
I wrote this on Saturday night, but I just remember the whole story about him buying a house for his mother, and he was going to have it be a surprise, and it might have been to her, but he had a training camp press conference, and he was talking about it, and then we were all like, wait, you haven't presented it to your mom yet? And he goes, no. And we were all kind of like, well, you're kind of putting it out to the world right now. And he kind of was like, oops. But
yeah.
And that's the kind of thing I remember. Given the circumstances, I just want to say I am somebody who has gone to therapy for a while now. And it was funny at first. I didn't really want to let anybody know that until my therapist finally said, why? And in a circumstance like this, like how you were saying about, especially for men, I do think it's important for me to pass that along, just because it's been really good for me. I absolutely think it's made a difference in my life. And I want to really encourage people that are in some sort of way, and even if you're not, you'd be amazed if you go to therapy what kinds of things you can kind of work on, even if you don't think you're that person. And I just want to say that.
Well, it's well done, Darren. It really is. It's and you know what? Maybe in some way, it just continues to spark more conversation, and hopefully we'll continue to see improvement on that front. Until then, rest in peace, Rondale Moore. I don't know if you guys have any other closing thoughts, statements regards Rondale, the combine, all the above. Feel free.
I don't want to. I certainly don't want to have it be weird, but again, we're all in a good place right now. If you need help, get help. But the combine does go on, and we will. I will see if I can get Dani to have some shrimp cocktail on Thursday night.
Is it on your card?
Not on my card, but it'll be on a card.
Great. As long as it's not mine.
And we'll figure this out from here, because it will be interesting kind of where the Cardinals kind of go in these next 2 months, both with draft and with quarterback. Someday we'll figure that out.
We miss you, Paul. Not to speak for Darren, but we miss you, Paul.
Yeah, if there was a lie detector
Hold down the
right
fort.
now, if there was a lie detector, the buzzer would have gone off right there. The polygraph would have gone. Yeah, exactly.
Light the lamp.
That's right. Exactly what that would have done. All right, guys, well done. Good job as always. Once again, I think the graphic here says it all. The two people deployed to the front lines of the combine, and then the person left behind. It says it all, and I think we've had everything that we've wanted to say here on Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation.